government? Did serve in the previous administration.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John. You didn't tell me that. Did serve in the previous administration. You mean the Obama administration. Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay?
Donald Trump has been having these dancing man, pay no attention to the fire and the shit burning down, press conferences that he's calling them every day. And there's always something interesting and funny about the press conferences because at some point he flips out or he says something just utterly ludicrous. Listen to this one. This is one of my favorites right here. He gets asked the question, legitimate question. Basically, Donald Trump went on Fox News. I think this was a few weeks ago. And he says, yeah, I don't think New York needs all those ventilators. They say that they need those ventilators, but I don't believe that. I mean, you get like one or two people using a ventilator. Not how many people use a ventilator. Now, he said that. He literally said that. New York is on fire. And they're freaking the fuck out because they don't have the supplies. They don't necessarily have the equipment necessary. They are begging Trump for help. And the White House has been unresponsive. Cuomo has been begging. Trump was like, yeah, I don't know if they need those the ventilators. Listen to this exchange because they do need those ventilators. Let's do the exchange.
President, I have two questions. The first is, you've said repeatedly that you think that some of the equipment that governors are requesting, they don't actually need. You said New York might not need 30,000. You said it on Sean Hannity's Fox News. You said
why don't you people act? Let me ask you.
You said
why don't you act in a little more positive? It's always trying to
get
you. And you know what? That's why nobody trusts the media anymore.
My question to you is, how is that going to impact?
Excuse me, you didn't hear me. That's why you used to work for the Times and now you work for somebody else. Look, let me tell you.
That's spiteful. Oh, that's spite. Honestly, I don't like Trump. Clearly, I don't like Trump. I started this off making the point, the point that I am getting to is that while people are dying based off of his incompetence, this is the shit that he is doing. This is what Donald Trump is doing right now, day after day after day. And they're like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be showing these press conferences. It's the president of the United States. You got to show the press conference, right? Look at the number of deaths and look at the numbers. Let's do the tally. We haven't did the tally for today, right? So 468,896 cases, 329 new cases. That's because we flipped over to the next day. Already 329, 16,697 deaths, 6 new deaths as of midnight, I suppose. But I would imagine it would be over 1,000 yesterday. This did not have to happen. This did not have to happen. This was a result of Donald Trump's not taking this seriously. And now he's arguing, trying to blame China. Look at what he did. He shut down funding for the World Health Organization. Listen to the reason as to why.
The WHO, that's the World Health Organization, receives vast amounts of money from the United States, and we pay for a majority, a biggest portion of their money. And they actually criticized and disagreed with my travel ban at the time I did it. And they were wrong. They've been wrong about a lot of things. And they had a lot of information early, and they didn't want to, they seemed to be very China-centric.
Now, understand what's taking place here. You have 468,896 cases. You've had 16,697 deaths. Those numbers are expected to go up. And if we're being honest, we don't really know what those numbers are. Donald Trump hasn't invested in the test kits. We don't necessarily have the ability to know how many people are actually infected with the coronavirus. So that number is fraudulent. That's the low bar. That's like, what's the lowest common denominator? Right there. But it's the lowest common denominator. You know the number is going to be higher just by virtue of common sense for not having the test kits. He has to blame somebody, right? Because if the public looks at Donald Trump and places the entirety of that blame on Donald Trump is going to lose this next election. Joe Biden can be considered a rapist. Joe Biden can be muttering, drooling, bloody-eyed, and he will still win this race if millions of people drop dead as a result of Donald Trump's incompetence and malfeasance and inability to use the government to marshal itself and the resources to deal with this. Not just to deal with it after the fact, but to deal with it before the fact, before he gets to the point of where it is now. He's trying to blame China. He's trying to blame Obama. They're trying to blame Democrats saying it was impeachment. They're trying to blame everything else as opposed to where the blame lies. If I had any advice for Donald Trump at all, stop. Just stop. Come out and do a press briefing. Say, look, we did fuck up. Don't say fuck up. Donald Trump probably can get away with saying fuck up because it's Donald Trump. We fucked up. But we are going to turn over a new leaf. Right now, I am adopting Bernie Sanders' plan. And I'm going to have coronavirus, Medicare for all with coronavirus. I don't care what any other condition you have. There are no restraints on this. Go to the doctor, get treated. We want to make sure that people are okay in the population. Change now. People do have the capacity to change on a dime. Now, what is the public perception of that particular change? A, they're going to be like, what the fuck just happened? B, they're going to wonder whether you're full of shit or not. But if you deliver, that's different. Despite this number being high, the public would actually forgive you, believe it or not. At least I think so, in doing that. Meaning Donald Trump can still win this election even though he has royally fucked this up right now. The catch becomes, will he change? And it doesn't seem like political actors do that very much in regards to changing on a dime. Either they think people will think they're disingenuous. But the catch is, you're the president of the United States. The only thing you need to do if you change on a dime is deliver on whatever you're trying to change. If you're saying I want to give $2,000 to every American until this crisis ends, I want to make sure that those small businesses can retain and keep their doors open, so I'm going to give the money to the small businesses. I don't give a shit if the speculators go bust. That's what I'm going to focus my attentions on. You're the president. You have agency. You have the Senate. And what is the Democratic Party going to do? Say no? Meaning you have... God, man. Like, it's shocking of like when you realize that Trump could still win this despite this. The catch is he's running against Joe Biden. It's a toss-up, I suppose. My basic point is this, and slight tangent. Broken clocks. All right, twice a day, right? Every so often, despite Donald Trump's dancing man show, despite the lying, despite the making shit up off the fly, despite the belligerence and attacking reporters and journalists, despite all that, every so often, Donald Trump has the eye of a child in the way he looks at competitions and the way he looks at the world. And sometimes that eye of a child hits upon something that media, that other political people, that other people in general tend to absolutely ignore when they're analyzing what took place in 2020. You can't put all of this at the feet of Sanders. Meaning, it's not one thing that went bad, or it's not one thing that ended the race in its entirety. It's a combination of factors. And Trump has just pointed out, one, that I have pointed out over and over and over again, the mainstream media has never mentioned. They've never mentioned. And it's one of the most fascinating aspects of the race. And they don't bring it up. And it's like, I don't know how you look at 2020 without bringing this up. So I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to dwell into Trump. And I'm going to say that Trump is 85% right on this tweet. The last part is ridiculous. But everything up to the last part, that last sentence, is 100% correct. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Late Night Real Men Can't Sleep, Real Men Do the News Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. So I saw this tweet and I laughed my ass off. I laughed my ass off on a few points because my first thought was, yes, this is true. This is the fucking word of God. B, I have mentioned this. C, mainstream media has never touched it. D, no Democrat has ever breathed a word of it. And Sanders will go to his grave knowing it's true and never mentioning it to anybody but maybe his wife. In the throes of passion, he may mention it to Jane, that fucking Elizabeth Warren. But besides that, he'll probably never bring it up. This is Donald Trump. Tweets. Bernie Sanders is out. Thank you, Elizabeth Warren. If not for her, Bernie Sanders would have won almost every state on Super Tuesday. That's a bit of an overstatement, but not that much of an overstatement. I'll show you what I mean. This ended just like the Democrats and the DNC wanted. Same as crooked Hillary fiasco. The Bernie people should come to the Republican Party. Trade. Trade. I think he's trying to say TPP and those type of things, as if he's the guy for that. The notion that Bernie Sanders people should vote for Trump, I think, is utterly ludicrous. And, you know, somebody may say, well, dude, you've just made the argument. Look, I think of politics in cutthroat ways. Fair enough. There are some situations where your objective, you win by making your opponent lose. That's a little bit different than you win, but it's a win of sorts. And if you can make your opponent lose, you have the ability to have some degree of leverage. Now, the catch becomes to have the accountability in play and the understanding that you're willing to do that in order to compel the hand of the stronger party in this particular relationship. If you want Medicare for all, that's where you go. If you want to get any of your policy ideas accomplished and you are not in power, that's where you go. It's kind of like Boris Johnson, or not Boris Johnson, it's like the UK, where you had the DUP party. The DUP was this tiny party, but the tiny party was necessary for the government to stay in power. Because that was necessary for the government to stay in power, the DUP had an outsized influence despite having a small contingent. Now, the catch with the Democratic Party, though, is they don't care if Joe Biden loses. At the very least, not the establishment part. The public does. But this higher echelon, their issue was, we need to stop Sanders. So what he's saying here is not that far away from the truth. Fact of the matter is this. Right here.
Which takes me to the state of our presidential campaign. I wish I could give you better news, but I think you know the truth. And that is that we are now some 300 delegates behind Vice President Biden, and the path toward victory is virtually impossible. So while we are winning the ideological battle, and while we are winning the support of so many young people and working people throughout the country, I have concluded that this battle for the Democratic nomination will not be successful.
And he, just like that, drops out. That doesn't happen without this.
When Culinary 226 did come out and criticize Bernie Sanders for Medicare for All, his supporters really attacked them. Do you feel, and you're someone who's actually come under that attack before, back in Iowa, back in January, do you feel like he's done enough to condemn the culture online that stems from his movement?
I've said before that we are all responsible for what our supporters do. And I think Bernie has a lot of questions to answer here. And I am particularly worried about what happened in the attacks on members of the Culinary Union, particularly on the women in leadership. The whole notion of publishing their personal addresses, their phone numbers, and then making very aggressive threats against their own safety and the safety of their families. That is not how we build an inclusive Democratic Party, and it is not how we build Donald Trump. We do not build on a foundation of hate.
We do not build on a foundation of hate. Bernie Sanders supporters are hateful, and they're attacking women, and they're being aggressive. Now, she has attached random people on fucking Twitter and on social media to Bernie Sanders as if he has some control over random people out in the space doing various things. Notice she lumps into the mainstream media narrative with the other Democrats in this particular pursuit and attacks Sanders. Now, it's not so much this specific attack, it's more so that the fact that she was willing to do it at all. Meaning Warren turned into an attack dog against Sanders more than anybody else in the race at a certain point, especially towards the end. Keep in mind, Elizabeth Warren, who decried super PACs, who even stood on stage, oh my God, stood on stage and say, all of these other sniveling bitches have a super PAC, except me and Amy. Amy actually did have a super PAC. Warren had a super PAC. That super PAC was floating around, even though it hadn't necessarily come up yet. But she even accused Sanders of having a super PAC. And I remember in the debate, I was like, wait a minute, did she just accuse Sanders of having a super PAC? What is she talking about? Sanders never said anything to, say that's not true or anything else. He just kind of stood there. And then, after having people give her money, after getting her support, after getting votes, after having people going out and knock on doors, after having all these people believing that Elizabeth Warren was a creature of the left and somehow working under this ideological framework, that because they thought that, they were shocked as shit when they realized, well, that wasn't true. She was a political actor just like she was in 2016. She gets out the race and continues to attack Sanders while being very loving to Joe Biden. That is literally what took place. On Super Tuesday, Warren, who decried and attacked everybody for having super PACs, used a super PAC to stay in the race. In staying in the race, this was Super Tuesday. Just to make the point that Trump is right. These are the states Sanders won. These are the states Biden won. But look at the numbers in the states when you dump into the states. Texas, Joe Biden, 34.5%. Sanders, 30%. Warren, 11.4%. Say for the moment that half of that support of Warren went to Sanders, which is what was taking place in regards to Money Consult. He could potentially win Texas. Say Warren gets out the race and throws her support behind Sanders. Maybe more than half goes to Sanders. I understand this is alternative history, but by the same token, it is foreseeable what I'm saying to be somewhat, it is possible that it's true. Her staying in the race held Sanders down, allowing Joe Biden to win Texas, Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Maine. Look at the numbers. Maine, 34.1%. Sanders, 32.9%. Warren, 15.7%. Massachusetts, 33.6%. Joe Biden, 26.7%. Sanders, 21.4%. Warren. Split the vote. She did her job. That's the entire point of the super PAC, right? The oligarchs giving Elizabeth Warren to stay in the race just to kneecap Sanders. Minnesota, Joe Biden, 38.6%. Sanders, 29.9%. Warren, 15.4%. Tell me how Trump is wrong. Look, tell me how Trump is wrong. The Democratic Party. Do you know what was the problem with what was the problem with the prison in Guantanamo Bay? Think about it for the moment. Our gulag off the coast of the United States, where we basically a house of horrors, a torture show paid and sponsored by the United States government. Yes, it was illegal. Yes, it was immoral. Yes, it was unethical. All of those things are true. But there was another problem that was a bit more significant that kind of makes my point about this. Political. There's an issue politically with it. You've allowed a situation where your enemies can now go and say, hey, look at the pictures of what America is doing. And unfortunately for America, that just so happens to be true. And the people who they're trying to recruit to their particular cause is emboldened by the fact that that's true, meaning the potency of that particular propaganda comes from the fact that you actually did those things, that we did have the House of Harris, that that place still is open and exists. You do have a president who's openly talking about torturing people and their families. Those things embolden your enemies because you can point to effectively a certain degree of not having credibility. When Trump says this, he's playing politics, but it's good politics. People get pissed off about that. The notion that Warren grifted for votes and support from the left and then turned around and not supported the candidate that the left chose is astonishing. Breathtaking even. Now, this channel was right about Warren going back like a year. But a lot of people were thrown off by her. And because of that, you know, I even feel burned by that. Not necessarily because I believe that Warren was something that she wasn't, more so because she did grift from specifically from the left and then turned around and didn't back the left's candidate. It's astonishing. He just really is. And so when Trump puts this out, tell me it's not true. Tell me it's not true. And keep in mind, this is a momentum election, meaning from state to state to state, a particular narrative of the race gets formed. And in this particular case of Super Tuesday or after South Carolina, well, it mattered. Her staying in the race, kneecapping Sanders in Super Tuesday mattered. It made it look like, oh God, Joe Biden is inevitable, which means in the going states within like a week or so, there were no debates. That's where you were. Warren did her job. Trump is right. As for joining the Republican Party, fuck that. That's fucking bananas. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks so.